You're listening to the Viral Volley podcast. Now here's your host, Rob, on the mic.
Hey, good day, everyone. Back on the Viral Volley podcast, a continued conversation from volleyballmag.com's College Volleyball Weekly or Weekly Roundup, whatever you want to call it. But we are talking about an incident that happened at the USC Pepperdine match night 2 after USC won 3-1 over.
Really right into it.
Really right into it. Pepperdine Waves and great matches. I mean, I always want to direct the attention to the players because we saw excellent play. Simon Gallus, 28 kills, 2 errors, 578. Lucas Frass ran their middle, 9 kills, 0 errors off 11 attempts, hitting 818. You still have Jacob Steele for the Waves, as well as Jalen had a great night too. So, and Spencer was repping on night 2. So, hats off to the play that we saw between these two matches. They're going to be at it come MPSF tournament time. But so what matches caught your eye this week? And we'll start with you, Jay. Been a little quiet this week.
I'm quiet because
it's calling for me to be fired about every other sentence. What quiet are you talking about right now? You know what I mean? So.
I'm going to talk about the new hot team of the week, Purdue Fort Wayne, and the Chilean player everybody's talking about. Now he's getting into his rhythm, and now he's finding some things. Purdue Fort Wayne's going to be a team that down the line you're going to see teams are not going to want to face them. They've got their opposite who's doing some good things. They've got the Chilean kid. They got a couple of them.
Ibarra.
Yeah,
at least you know where he's from versus the kid from Ohio State changed countries every other week.
Yeah, the Polish kid from Ohio State. You know who I'm talking about. But no, Purdue Fort Wayne's a new hot team, and that's fun. I'm glad to see that Rock's getting a little love and his team's playing well. And the MIVA, that's going to be a hotly contested conference championship for sure. So I'm not saying I'm surprised. I'm just saying I like what you're doing, Rock. I hope you're having a good rest of the year.
All right, Dave, thoughts?
So there were a few things that caught my eye. We already talked about GCU, but by the way, me and my wife were watching that match as we were waiting to go to dinner. And she all of a sudden saw Sean Olmstead and his beautiful mustache. And she goes, "Hey, he looks like Ted Lasso." And so I told Sean that yesterday. So if somebody wants to send Sean the believe sign, because he's having to do a nice Ted Lasso impression right now and keep his boys fighting hard, which he's doing a good job. But
hey, and it works out because he can get khakis and they're sponsored by Nike. It's a Nike
Oh
school.
Man. Yeah, he should just dress as Ted Lasso from here on out. It's great. So that match, McKendree beating Loyola was a good one. And then them being down 0-2 and almost coming back and winning 5 at Purdue Fort Wayne. So those stood out to me. Long Beach State beating Stanford. What was more impressive was Nikolov from the service line. I think he had 5 straight aces at one point. If you go back to our first episode, I was trying to tell people that kid's good. I'm glad that he's backed me up and continues to prove he's good. And then Northridge beating Stanford the next night. And getting Wetter back. Wetter hadn't played. He's a big part of their offense. Obviously, he hits for a high efficiency, and they get him a lot of balls. So, winning in 4 against Stanford, a team that's pretty good, that's played good volleyball, and it'll be interesting to see with however many guys. I think they have 12 guys on the roster, maybe 13 guys. How does Stanford hold up as the season keeps going? Keeping away from injuries and. Anytime you're that thin, there's a few things that could happen and all of a sudden it goes downhill.
Yep. Daniel Wetter, one of the best handles in social media. Wetter is better.
We're keeping the show clean here. What are you doing? I already accidentally cussed.
Northridge is better. I'm just saying, with Wetter, they're better.
That's true.
We've jumped the shark officially, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, Dan, thoughts on last week?
I don't know. They certainly covered a lot. And again, I'll go with Jay and compliment the Rock and his group, and certainly beating us at our place, and then beating McKendree at home. 2 great wins for that program. And as the MIVA certainly becomes a gauntlet in terms of we talked about. So I've been this is my 18th year. Hopefully, I have 19
Wow. 18.
But so it's my 18th year, and it's like I always felt like our conference was like a 3-4 team race usually, and a lot of years you'd have 1 or 2 teams kind of separate themselves. But I don't think that's the case this year. I think you saw Lindenwood playing some good volleyball, and I think there's 5-6 teams that you get to the conference tournament that could be in a pretty good spot to compete for that conference tournament. And so, which is fun. It's fun to see that. I think outside of our conference, we've already kind of hit on a little bit. I thought Northridge beating Stanford was a good win for Northridge. They haven't played a ton of matches. If we slide over to the SIAC, Central State got their first win. So that was really good for them. I think that was their 11th match. They finally got win number 1. So I know Ray's working with that group and trying to get those guys better. And then you're kind of seeing, Conference Carolina. I think it's Mount Olive and North Greenville. We're both sitting about 5-1 overall.
NJU's atop top that conference because that was on my notes because everyone was watching Mount Olive and Belmont Abbey early on, and here NJU's. I think they've only got 1 loss in conference.
Yeah.
9-1.
Fred's done a nice job with that group, and they're competing and got some nice wins. And so yeah, I think outside of that, that's all I have.
Yep.
I got one thing. How has this topic not been discussed? Fort Valley State driving home from matches and their bus flipped, which is crazy. And thankfully, nobody was severely injured, but that's gnarly. I can't believe that wasn't talked about. So I talked a little bit with Larry last week about it, and he said, yeah, it was a pretty gnarly situation. He didn't go into too much depth with me at the moment, but I'm just glad that everybody's okay. That's, a lot of us are on the road at this time of year, and I know the guys out west maybe don't deal with the weather that we do, but holy smokes, man, there's some dicey days that our bus drivers, do a great job of keeping us safe. And I don't necessarily think it was the bus driver's fault here. I just think it might have been the weather, but I'm just glad that everybody's okay.
Yeah, thank goodness for the safety. I saw that tweet come out. I'm like, oh my gosh, and thankful to hear there are no injuries, no serious injuries. So. Back in conference play, we got the EIVA action, which I wanted to point. Penn State is definitely still at the top, but NJIT gave them a run this last week. 5-setter, high drama. Wildman comes back with 2 aces. Talk about being man of the moment. But what do you think? NJIT, can they upset the cart? Should we ask just Jay, or should we go to the other opinions first and then to Jay? Let's go Dave first.
I got no opinion on it. I think Penn State is clearly head and shoulders above everybody in that conference. And I think their challenge is, can they stay engaged? Right. Cause that's the hard part about playing. You heard, I made fun of Dan, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, pumping up a team that maybe hasn't even gotten a win yet. And that's the hard part when you're on top and you're clearly have separated yourself from your opponents, is how do you keep them engaged and playing hard?
Yep.
Dan. The great thing about volleyball is you get to a conference tournament. Yeah, Penn State could lose to NJIT. Let's just say that. So should Penn State win? Yes. Yeah, I think they're separated, but I think NJIT is talented enough, and they know now on top of that going 5 that they just need a little bit of confidence and make a few plays. But so I think those guys were in a position to take that, and they cinch a few things up. Maybe they win that match. So
yep. And Jay.
You know why NJIT can beat that team? Because they didn't have their starting setter. NJIT has their starting setter. That's a different match. That's my thought.
Do they play again at Penn State?
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be 3-0. I'm calling it right now. 3-0 Penn State. Yeah.
Ooh.
Look at that. Going bold. I like it.
Confident in a year where too many things don't happen like that, just so you know.
It's going to be 3-0. Thank God I can't bet because of NCAA rules, because I would be a degenerate, but I'm calling it 3-0.
Okay.
Well, let's look at the
anybody who gambles. Hold on. Anybody who gambles on college sports is an idiot. You know what these kids do on Friday nights and Saturday nights? There's no way, if you're a smart individual and you like your money, that you're betting money on college sports. Pro, I get it. People want to gamble.
I'm not a smart individual. I do like my money, but I'm stupid enough to think I can make more, so I would be a degenerate.
Well, let's jump over to the self-proclaimed degenerates conference, the MPSF. I got to segue into the different segments.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks.
I said self-proclaimed. You said it on screen. So MPSF, we talked in length about the one of the matches, that's like the USC Pepperdine series, the split of the series. But there are a few things that could affect the outcome of the MPSF, and that's the split of that series, because your team was one of the top 2 teams picked preseason poll and even the AVCA poll. But what does that mean for the MPSF? And we'll start with it.
Not too much. And the reason I say not too much is with GCU, us, SC, I mean, every team out there in the MPSF, they're going to beat up on each other, similar to what you're seeing in MIVA. And then with so few conference matches now, it was different when we played 22 to 24 conference matches, because then things played out. With so few conference matches, it's going to determine who hosts, but that's about it, right? And other than that, you got to play good volleyball, because you're going to be facing somebody good in your quarterfinal, semifinal, and then final. And it doesn't really change from year in and year out in terms of that. So it doesn't mean much in terms of, whoever, hosting is going to be a big deal, because I think there's a nice little advantage there. But I think if it's in Southern California, does that really change things drastically? Not really.
Yeah. Anything to add? Other 2 coaches, Dan or Jay? Outside perspective. Nope. Okay, well, let's go to the other piece that was big news, and this isn't gossip talk. I actually saw it on Jerem Jordan's Twitter feed of BYU TV Sports, but he'd reported that setter Zio Meyer has been dismissed from the team. We mentioned it in the other piece, but for the rest of the semester. So now Bartosz Lewinsky, or they call him Bartek, is the starter. Big impact for BYU in the MPSF. We'll start with Dan. He's thinking. He's got the thinking.
Start with me?
Oh, I said Dan.
Oh,
Sorry, Dan.
He's thinking that hard.
Jay popped out really fast, so I just thought he was going. You know what I mean? In terms of that. So, well, I think anytime a guy leaves, there's probably stuff going on inside that we don't know about. And so I'm not going to speculate on how Sean runs his team or what might have happened or any of that stuff. So I respect Sean quite a bit, and certainly they got to run their team the direction they need to. So I'm certainly, there's some valid reasons with why that's happening. And as you got to move forward and compete with the pieces you have, that's what Sean does with his group. And, they were battling the 5 and had themselves in a good spot. So Sean's got to feel good about that. And he'll keep pushing where they need to make them better. So politically correct answer. Do we like that? So there you go. So.
Go to Jay for the one that's not so politically correct.
And we'll go to Jay then, so he can unpolitically correct it.
Now, I won't speculate either, but I will tell you that, there are very few reasons why most teams will release a guy for the season, and you can pretty much take it from there. So, but I think it also just goes to prove that Dan should give one of his 2 setters that he has over to BYU so that they can play. And here's the other thing to think about. If Stanford only has 12 or 13 guys, imagine if one of their setters was taken out. Now all of a sudden, they probably are having a hard time scrimmaging as it is, but now imagine if they're shorter even more. So that's crazy. So yeah.
Yep.
I'm all for the trade rule. If he wants to trade an outside, we're good. You know what I mean? So
the transfer portal is really only one step away from that.
Can
you imagine Gardini and Mitchum playing next to each other? That'd be pretty good. You know what I mean?
All right, Dave.
Kudos. I don't know what happened, but kudos to Sean for making obviously what was a tough decision. And as we were just talking about, we're still in the business of teaching and trying to mold young men. Again, I don't know what happened. So hopefully nobody was hurt in whatever was done in terms of physically, or hopefully there was hopefully whatever happened to this individual is a good learning lesson, and it's going to be a positive going forward. That being said, that team played really hard against a good Grand Canyon team, so obviously what Sean's doing is working there. So
yep. Well, I want to get to the fan question. I know we're running really long here. So I want to have you guys pick 1 or 2 matches. We're going into maybe 1 or 2 fan questions. That's okay. Time-wise, if you can handle it.
Let's do more fan questions.
More fan questions.
Watch all
lightning round.
You only want to look at the week 9 matches, huh?
Just watch them. Just
Oh.
small.
Well, okay. All right, guys who are looking forward to their picks, here we go. Good questions. Last week, I only got to 2 of them. And this week they're even better. Where am I going to start? Let's see. They're listening though, but said here, they wanted more in-depth discussion on changes to coaching actual serving, not the rehash of the quote, have to serve aggressive, blah, 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 blah. We all get that, but things being taught differently have changed and developed in the last couple of years on serving techniques and skills. And they referenced Nikolov's 5-ace run to turn that set versus Stanford and Wildman's back-to-back aces in the 5th. So who wants to take on the serve, receive, and serving?
They're not teaching anything different. Those are just some kids that have figured some things out. People out there in volley land. If you see a team with all jump floaters win a national championship, then we can have this conversation. Other than that, stop it. Just stop it.
Jay hasn't watched my team lately. I've got 5 jump floats and 1 spin guy. So
And you lost this weekend.
and we also won, jerk. Hey, all right, match to watch in 2 weeks when Jay comes to play at our place. We'll see how our jump floats work out. So, all right, and this is an honest to God answer. If anybody actually wants to know the math that goes into it, you can email me, and my email is david.hunt@pepperdine.edu. I have no problem saying that because it's on the website. And just like the idiot frat guys that called my office phone at 10:30 on Friday night and left me a bunch of voicemails and then forgot that their name pops up on my Pepperdine phone. So, yeah. Email me, honest to God, it's a long answer in terms of the math that goes into it. But the short of it is, on a perfect pass, you're going to first ball side out. I think I've talked about this at 54%. And then it goes down, good pass, medium pass. Then you got a bad pass. If you overpass, you're losing that rally 85% of the time and so forth. So there's a formula that I have, and I didn't come up with it. People a lot smarter than me came up with it. But basically, if your number's above 54% with that expected first ball number, it means you're missing so much, and when it's in, you're not taking them out of system enough that their first ball number is over a perfect pass. So you probably got to come up with something different if you're not able to knock the opponent out of system at the rate you need to with the amount that you're airing. And there's an analytics number that somebody developed for us as well. There's actually an ideal air percent for every server once you get enough data. So there's a nice graph that shows, hey, up to this point, now you're not getting any return on investment in terms of their serve. So I think, at least for me, that's the deal. And I'm not a proponent of this, hey, treat every serve the same. I think you got to look at what their passers are like, what rotation they're in. And just like we would never teach a hitter to only hit high flat, right? Hey, you just got to always hit high flat. A different set determines a different shot choice. So a different toss determines a different serve selection, right? And so I think we got to teach that a little more effectively as coaches, at least from a serving perspective.
Dan, anything to add on the serve receive discussion? Or serving?
Well, I think your pieces dictate a lot. We talk about this. So you got to have an arm. If you can't jump serve and you're not hitting the ball at a certain speed, then you might as well just roll it over. And so you have to figure out your personnel with what to train them and works effectively for them. I do think every guy should be able to float. And your jump guys got to know how to float as well, because you'll face a team where it's like, hey, like Dave said, they're not very good float receiving this rotation. And so you want to be able to pick on some things. And so your guys having a couple of different serves. Float guys being able to serve short is a lost art a little bit, and that can jam up some big stuff and do some different things where setters got to track the ball. And chop guys, you saw Loyola chop us 3 or 4 times with pretty good chops, and our receive group didn't react well. We don't have a lot of guys chopping in our gym, so that doesn't make us better as a practice as whole because we're not seeing it enough. And so you got to know your personnel and pieces, and when it comes to the jump serve, you got to be serving a certain speed to be somewhat effective, or have some type of rotation hand movement that makes the ball tail right, tail left, or make some movement stuff. So teaching those things, they're fine, but those things have been going on for a while. I do think the debate was about, hey, do you go serve as hard as you can, and where does that get you? And we saw Ohio State have some pretty phenomenal arms and players that could put that pace. And the 2 guys that you just brought up, Nikolai and Brett Wildman, have great arms. have played at a high level and are creating some great opportunities where serve receivers aren't seeing those in their own gym. So you see the breakdown there. So I don't think it's necessarily these special training things. I think it's personnel driven off what you're trying to do at times and what they can do for you. So
Here, Rob, here's the common theme amongst really good servers. Guys that are good servers, they could bend it, they have bite, or they could blast it, right? Usually those are your spin servers. The other one is a float guy that could add spin. So he's got a half. He could serve space, or he could hit it with speed. If your guys can do that, usually they're pretty good servers. Again, if you want to know more, email me about it. As long as you don't have a recruitable age kid, I will gladly talk to you about it.
You don't have a Wikipedia for your serving stuff there, Dave?
Yeah, not so much, because it's mainly just crazy talk. Usually I just ramble a lot and talk all about this stuff. So
Being that half-dead coach on the sideline that you referred to earlier.
well, that's all the things I'm thinking about why can't we do these things? And it's mainly, me just being upset at myself or our team. And then I sit there grumpy at our side.
All right, next question. Look, Dave, you're like the fan favorite this last week.
Oh, great.
Last week, Dave talked about how his system has changed every year. Do coaches recruit to fit their system or find the best volleyball players or athletes and design a system around them? Who wants to jump in on this one here?
I'll go first. I certainly think it's a little bit of a combination. Like there's a systematically like some things that I really like to do and I train and certainly always trying to get better and watch and listen at the same time. But I want to recruit personalities that fit our culture. That becomes really important. I think when I first started here, we were just trying to get anybody that wanted to come play for us. And then we got to a point where we were able to be a little bit more picky, and it's like, who fits our culture well? Who do I coach well? Who's a good relationship with me? And, certainly there are talented guys that fit that mold. And then every once in a while we'll run across a talented guy and he doesn't quite fit our mold. And my guys will be like, hey, coach, he's not a good fit. And it doesn't matter how talented he is. I'm not offering that guy. And so there's a balance with that and a balance with when you're doing your thing, but you have to be able to change sometimes too. You can't be putting a round peg into a square hole just because you're trying to do something. So you got to be a little bit better about, hey, what does this guy particularly do? And how do I have to adapt or change a little bit? That might make it a little bit better. But I think for you to be successful, there are certainly some certain pieces that you got to have. So
I would agree with that. First of all, you can fit a round peg into a square hole. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole, but tomato. No, I think Dan hit on the head. We all have certain things that we like, things that we try to do more often than not, but it also depends on which kids we can get in, which kids want to come, and maybe we have a run for a couple of years where I've got smaller guys. Well, we got to figure out different ways to get kills. And maybe we have other years where we have bigger guys and we're able to block and play defense a little bit better. So it's a combination of all things, which is the beauty of coaching is it's a puzzle every year. And every year we get a chance to try something new and see if we can make it work.
Yep. Dave, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, there's a base talent level that every coach knows that they need in their gym, right? And I think we will all start with good arms. You're not going to go anywhere without a good arm. And when I first started coaching, I went to this coaching clinic in Carl McGowan, right? Marv just pumps him up and says, hey, this is one of the greatest coaches of all time. Talk to him about anything. I said, hey, how do you teach arm swings? And he goes, you just don't recruit bad ones. And I was thinking, that's what you got for me, right? That's the genius coaching right there. So that sort of stuck with me. But you got to have a good arm. And then I agree with Dan. Once you identify that base talent, then it's what's going to fit into our culture at our university, who's going to get along with our coaching staff. And then once you have that guy, then once they're in your gym, you're coaching your guys up, you're training them. You don't know who's going to develop over those 4 years. I think we all take educated guesses. But just like the NFL draft, the NBA draft, there's no science to it. We're trying to make an educated guess, but not every guy we recruit is a hit. So then you got to take your 7 best at that time and try to create a system that works for them. So when I say that, I don't have one system. If there was a magic system, everyone would do it and we'd all, be playing the same way. And the reality is you got to take what works for your guys, knowing the standards that it's going to take to score. Dan talked about 19 points, right? That's how many you're going to have to earn against a good team. So how am I going to score those 19? Are they all going to be kills? Do I have guys that are scoring quick ones from the service line? Are we going to block them? Are we going to slow them down? How are we going to do that with the group we have? So I think the best coaches are adaptable in that regard.
Good stuff. Well, this next question, we kind of went in detail in the beginning, but I'm going to ask it again just for clarity's sake, and we can address this person who asked it. But is it time to police the players so that we don't see things? They name 2 players, make choke signals from the sideline, or watch a particular position who handles the ball verbally taunt an opponent all match long. The level of chippiness has been getting higher the last few seasons, and the stress of COVID is likely having an impact. Where do we draw the line?
Rob,
Controlled.
what's up?
Coach controlled. Coaches have to control their teams and be aware of what their teams are doing. I've yelled at my sideline a couple times this year because we have a pretty rowdy bench, and it's on me. You know what I mean? I gotta police my guys and control my guys, and if they're doing something that's unethical, I'm gonna lay into them and let them know. And it's my responsibility to teach them that certainly we want our bench involved and fiery. We want our guys on the court fiery, and they might pepper a few things, but at some point there's a line drawn, and they're going to hear from me, or they're not going to be a part of the team, or they're not going to play, and that's where it's at. So
I agree with Dan. I don't want to take away from the competitiveness of the match. I do think that that's part of it, and I think that fans, that's part of it too. Having fans that are into it and engaged is good. There's a difference between fans being into it, pulling for their team, getting on our guys, and then a fan yelling out, "Hey, how's your boyfriend?" to somebody on our team. That's where I draw the line. And I just think about the real world, right? What would fly in the real world? It doesn't fly to walk down the street and make a choking sign to somebody. That's not okay. And I think we would all sit there and say, that's not okay. But I think some good natured, heckling or razzing about, hey, why are you wearing a different jersey? Yeah, I've heard all those before. And if you want to say that to the libero, you don't really know volleyball, but all right, it's funny. So,
what popped in my head was Ron Artest running up in the stands and going after that guy.
yeah.
There's a reason why I don't pay to go to any sporting event. It's because the fans have taken liberties that I think are gone overboard a little bit. I was at a match. In fact, I was coaching a match against Dave's team a couple years ago, and when the fires were going on in Malibu, and I remember somebody in the stands turning around or were saying something effective, how's your home doing? And I literally, while the match is going on, turned around and said, who the F said that? Look at me straight in the eye and tell me who the F said that, because that's unacceptable. Dan touched it. It's like there's a moment in time where it's okay to hear things like you suck and your socks are dirty and whatever you want to do to get in somebody's head. But really, we're losing humanity here. Like let's remember that we're all in this to be in a competitive sport environment. We want to have fun. We want to play hard, and we want to do all that fun stuff. But remember that we're all human beings here for a second. And so saying things like that, it's unsavory and it's unfortunate.
Yep. Well, kind of an extension of that same question is it's gone to this, do seeing coaches, and they name particular coaches, but I'm not going to do that here, go at it without repercussions, give permission for players to push the line in the sand a little farther.
I'll respond. I don't know if that was mentioned towards me or not, but when I mentioned to Jeff the other night for him to control his side, I coached with Gary for a long time. So I was under the impression that Gary and his side didn't want that going on. I made that assumption. I don't know if that's the reference to, but that being said, I do think the guys are going to act how we let them act, or they're going to match what we do, right? The coaches that tend to be more stoic, their teams tend to be more stoic. The coaches are more fiery. I think their teams tend to be more fiery. So I don't know if I don't really know what that reference is to, but that's my take on it.
I'm trying to think. In my personal career of 25 years of coaching, I can think of about less than 5 instances where I had words with an opposing coach. You know what I mean? And I'm not as fiery as Jay, but I'm still pretty fiery. Do you know what I mean? In terms of that, do you know what I mean? So, and most of those instances, I would say, we're just exchanging some words, and then usually kind of afterwards, at some point later, we're talking again. So shoot, the last one I think I can remember is probably Rick at UC Santa Barbara. We had a group that was pretty fiery back, and me and him were at a fall scrimmage one time and had some words across. And it was a fall scrimmage, and Rick's great, and me and Rick are great. You know what I mean? And it was just competitive volleyball in terms of that. So it's an interesting question, because there really hasn't been that many incidents that I can think about where coaches, at least in men's volleyball, because the community is so tight, compared to women's volleyball, where there's backstabbing and it's not as tight, all these things that go on. And so where the guys' game is kind of like, we're having beers in the summer recruiting and doing stuff and all that, you know what I mean, in terms of that. So,
well, and part of that is because there's less teams.
yeah.
Who knows if there were more teams, if there'd be more incidents, and maybe the fraternity is not quite as tightly knit as it is right now. Like, Dave and I played golf in the summer when we were recruiting this year. It's like, I know all these coaches. I have beers with them when we're out recruiting. I, hang out. They hang out my house. I go to their house. It's a really unique situation. But I wonder if it were bigger, if there'd be less of that going on, or maybe there'd be more cliques going on. But
Yeah. Well, from an outsider perspective, from the non-coaching fraternity, I mean, from what I can see, relationship-wise, all the coaches get along. I mean, there's been maybe one incident I know that there's been tension, but I think we all know who that is. There's just an intense rivalry between the two schools because they're always vying for national championship. They're super competitive, and sometimes the fans kind of egg on that whole situation and actually infuriate a little more. But for the most part, coaches get along. I see you guys working together in summers, camps, on recruiting trips at all the different club tournaments. Like, wow, there's that whole coaching crew. Oh, there's Cossie, there's Fred, there's Jay. So it's a good group. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, everyone's upstanding individuals. They represent their programs well. Hence the reason why I enjoy talking with all of them, because you just see they're good people running programs. So I want to go and end our fan questions there. We have a few more, but they're ones that aren't as pressing because these were more the ones that have been on topic. But I definitely want to give a shout out. I didn't tell you guys about this, but Volley Venue put out this great graphic on Instagram. Overachieving teams this 2022 season: SC, Santa Barbara, Ball State, Lincoln Memorial, and St. Francis. But you got to read that clip on there. Go to their Instagram, go to their Twitter, because it's pretty lengthy. But I just want to add, I think Stanford should be on there because they came back from being almost eliminated from competition. So just wanted to reference that there. Take a look at it. We'll maybe discuss next week because I thought it was a great infographic to put out in the volleyball world. Also, shout out to Micah Christensen, who's playing professionally in Russia. And if you have been under a rock, a war has broken out. And it's, I know there's a lot of concern in that area. And he's the lone American playing in Russia. If you, the Polish players, have messaged and said, we've stopped league play, and same thing, I guess, with France as well. So a lot of stuff happening in that part of the world, and we just need to make sure that we keep all of them in our thoughts and prayers because they're too close to the conflict and there's an unnecessary life being lost. So with that, we got another week 9 coming up here of intense action. Hawaii goes in action to UCSC, so we'll see some Big West play. I think Jay's coming. Jay and Dan, I think you're coming westward, aren't you? If I remember off the top of my head.
Well, I'm hoping I'm here at week 10, so hopefully I see you guys next week.
Oh, someone cut out. I guess Dave's leaving.
Dave's already gone. He left. So anyway, yeah, we go out to Hawaii next week, not this week, the following week. So
yep.
Yeah, the great spring migration starts this weekend for some teams. We go out there the following week and pick up SC, Pepperdine, and UC Irvine.
Yep. Well, I don't know if we're going to get Dave back, but I want to thank Dave Hunt of Pepperdine, Jay Hoslick of George Mason, and Dan Friend of Lewis. I wish you the best this week in your matches as we are getting into conference play and over that halfway point. Thanks a lot, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Yeah.